Hello again, YouTube. I am back today to talk about one of the things that I was concerned about when I first retired, and that was, what am I going to do with myself every day, all day? So what I did is I really looked at all the extra time I would have when I didn't have the routines and the time of working, and broke it down into what will I do on a daily basis, and also what will I do for long-term goals. So one of the things was to plan my day out and not just let it slip away. And in there, I would put things on a daily basis, such as fitness and reading and connecting with other people. But how does that look on a long-term basis? Like, what would be the big goals? Well, some examples were for fitness. I hadn't been lifting weights for about 5 or 6 years. I stopped just before COVID and then, of course, never really got back into it. And I had always loved doing that. So what I did is I connected with somebody. It was my niece who wanted to also get back into a weightlifting program. And we would connect with each other. We did it off of the Peloton app that anybody can get on their phone or their computer, or if you have the bike. And we would say, what programs are we going to do? Okay, we're going to do this 4-week program 3 times a week. And then we would connect with each other to make sure we were both doing it and then progressing to heavier weights. And we started this about 6 months ago, and I found having a buddy system really helped, but it also helped me set goals as to what are we going to do when this 4-week program is over? Are we going to do something longer, something with heavier weights? What was it going to be? So it just wasn't a matter of doing the same thing every day. I also I used to do a lot of running, and I loved trail running. And so that had really fallen by the wayside during COVID. And because I retired during COVID, I really just kind of stopped going out and doing what I really like to do. So I had to get out my calendar and put it in there. Was I going to go longer? Was I going to go faster? How was that going to look? So that would be fitness. So it would be a daily plan, but also looking at a bigger goal. Last year, a bunch of us went to Moab in the United States and did a 3-day trail running event. And the longest day was about 28 kilometers, which is about almost 20 miles. So of course that took training, and it also took having a buddy to talk to it about and go out on the trails with, because let me tell you, it is boring being out there on your own at times. The other goal would be something like socialization. As I said, I retired during COVID, and it was really easy not to see people after a while. I got used to it. I got used to just doing Zoom calls. I have a partner that I live with, so of course I always saw him, so it never felt like I was alone. And so once I retired and didn't have that day-to-day going in to see people in the office, I realized I had to make a plan. I had to actually write down what were my goals for socialization for the week. Was I going to go for coffee with a friend, go for a hike, even just call my mother? Like, what was it going to be besides just sitting at home or doing something with my spouse? Another goal was volunteering. I have always liked to volunteer. I don't like to take on really long-term volunteer goals because of other things in my life that just seem to get in the way, but I always like to have a regular plan to volunteer. I think it's really important that we give back to our community. So what I did is, there was a trail running organization that I used to run their races, and now what I do is I write down what all the races are. I might do one in a year, a shorter one now, but I will go and volunteer at those events, and I have it in my calendar, and I make sure that I get my application in to volunteer and let them know what my times are. So I'm regularly going out there and giving back to the community. Another thing is travel. I think almost everybody says, I can't wait till I retire and I can travel. Well, it would be really easy just to do the same thing every year. We have family that goes to Hawaii every year, and we could just go meet up with them in Hawaii once a year. But I really think we need to make a goal. We've started doing this. It's not focused yet. It's fairly haphazard, but we want to go somewhere different every year, whether it's to a European country, or I'd never been south of the equator. I'd like to go to Australia or New Zealand or even Africa. I've never done that, but it won't just happen unless I make a plan for it. That brings us into the next thing, is budget. when we retire, we have a different source of income than we do when we're working. And I think it's really important to sit down with a professional, if you can, and look at how that money, if you have like an investment fund or your pensions or whatever it is, what is the best way to utilize that throughout your retirement? Now, we can't all predict the day we're going to die. And I think some of us would say, let's just spend that last penny on the last day we're alive. Some of us will want to leave something for our children. Whatever your goal is, what's the best way to do that? And one of the terms I've heard is that there's several phases to retirement. The early phase is the go-go phase. It's when we're young enough to want to get out and do things, to want to see new things, and to have the energy for it. And the next phase they call the slow-go phase. And that phase is when you're not doing as much, or maybe it's a more structured travel kind of thing. And maybe that doesn't take as much money because you're not doing as much of it. And then they call it the no-go phase. And that's when you're perhaps needing support or care, or you're going into independent living or some kind of supported environment. And maybe that takes less money, or maybe your plans are to live in a really cheap retirement place and you'll need more money. But it's good to, when you first retire, look at your budget and look at what you want to do. The last thing I want to talk about is personal development. I was been given so many books over the years about how to live my best life, be the best person I could be. And I must admit, I haven't read them. I've read a few of them, I've read parts of them. So I've made it as part of my goal to go through those books. And if I'm not reading them, pass them along. And if I am reading them, to maybe take some notes so that I can really internalize some of that. So that's kind of the main parts of retirement that I'm looking at as a fairly new retiree, someone who's now, without the pandemic being in the way, making plans for my retirement. And that's the sort of thing that I'm going to be talking about more on this channel, and taking each one of those topics and talking about them more in depth. Since I posted my last video, I've had a few people comment that they're subscribing and that they're also interested in these topics. So if anybody has anything specific that they would like me to look at in a bit more detail, please comment below or send me a message. Okay, thanks, and happy retirement.